thank you all very much for being here and joining me today for this scholarly snippet session on how to boost your scholarly research profile. I'm Kyle. I'm the Electronic and Technical Services Librarian at California Health Sciences University. And I'd like everyone to take a minute and pack a bag so you can join me on the maiden voyage of the scholarship. Okay. So let me stop this real quick. All right. So on the scholarship, we're going to take a quick tour before we set off. And I think a good place to start is to go onto the bridge. And I want to say, first off, when it comes to scholarly profiles, you are the captain of your scholarly profile, okay, of your authorship. So as cliche as that may sound, it's 100% true, all right? So unless you have an assistant, which I'm assuming most of us probably don't, you're the one that this is going to fall to, okay? So, and honestly, let's be real, this is essentially marketing, right? You're marketing yourself. You're saying, hey, look at me, look at what I've done, what I am doing, and what I will be doing. And there's totally nothing wrong with that, all right? Actually, I think it's quite totally the opposite, all right? You're contributing to the body of knowledge in whatever field or discipline you're in. So you should be proudly and confidently saying, I did all this, right? Look at everything I've done. So before this, I've had questions now that pretty much ranged from, what should I do as a beginner to a lot more advanced types of questions. So I try to tailor this kind of to fit somewhere down the middle. Okay, hopefully I'm hitting both. So I wanted to start with just why the need, right? Why is this important to even do? And I would say professionally, having a strong online profile presence can totally boost your overall appearance or stature, I guess, with your peers. And it can help frame you as motivated and above all else, invested in your career. All right. Now, it's not the only way to boost that. Okay. But it's going to give you a huge leg up. Right. So, especially with current and former employers too, right? Them being able to see all this online, see who you are, what you've done. But beyond this, it's a way to showcase your work to your peers, and it extends that possibility of networking and possible collaborations by getting that exposure and getting eyes on your body of work, all right? And also it increases discoverability of not only your work, but again, of you as a professional, which I think is something we really want to keep in mind. So some of the cons, and probably number one, the process is time consuming, right? Especially initially to set these up. But not only that, it can be very tedious to keep up with and update multiple platforms, especially because it seems like there's just so many to choose from, right? So which ones are best? Which ones should I be using? All right, these are all important questions, but honestly, I don't think there's a definitive answer on which are quote unquote best, because it will be unique to each of us. And to some degree, totally unique to each of us to some degree. And depending on what we value with each platform, right, we'll kind of go towards one that we like more. What I want to go through, though, are 6 that I believe are a good combination for beginners and advanced users alike. So, I mean, even right there, my bias is that I'm trying to appeal to a larger crowd. So my choices are going to be adjusted like that, right? So, but I do have reasoning behind this group, which I'll go over at the end. And I want to go over a little bit how to make this a bit more manageable too. So let's head back to the ship, and we're going to go all the way to the front to the bow first, okay? I'm pretty sure that's called the bow in the OCR ID, okay? Or ORCID, however you want to say it. So most of us probably know what the OCR ID is, but for anyone that doesn't, it's not meant to be a profile. It's not meant to be a repository or a CV. It's essentially a unique identifier, right? A unique ID assigned to you that distinguishes you from others that might have your same name, okay? So that's obviously a pretty simplistic definition. And I think another way to describe it is, it's basically a bibliographic record of a person that kind of stores the minimum amount of metadata, right? You sign up, it assigns you a unique ID and URL, and you can put that into your publications to eliminate name ambiguity And as a bonus, it gives those that may be interested the ability to link back to a list of your other publications, right? So ORCID is used by dozens or hundreds of publishers and organizations. Some of them are like the open access publisher, PLOS or PLOS, however you say that. Also Wiley, right? Springer Nature, BMJ Journals, Sage, and on and on. And some of them are starting to require that you actually have an ORCID too. The public facing side of an ID page can list things like places of employment, records for past research, obviously review activity, among other things. So it's not like some of the platforms I'm going to be talking about in that it's not meant to store full text, nor is it meant to act like a social media platform. Okay, it's kind of that linking structure behind everything. Now, I had a question about researcher ID versus ORCID, and researcher ID is associated with Web of Science, and it's a great thing to set up too. The difference here is that researcher ID is going to be limited. I say limited, but Web of Science has a ton of journals, 2 Web of Science journals, right? And if you pair it with Publons, it becomes a really cool environment where you can create that profile, you can get the citation metrics, all that kind of stuff. But even with Publons, you can actually associate ORCID with it too. And ORCID is going to be, it's community driven, right? And it's more neutral, and it can be associated with any article from any publisher. You can even attach it to data sets, equipment, experiments, patents, other media, pretty much anything, right? So let's go into, so I searched for Stephen Hawking, and I'm not 100% sure that he had an ORCID, but whoever set this up did a good job either way. And I think it's a good illustration. On the left-hand side, you can see that's his number, that's his link. Okay, so it's a permalink. That's basically what it becomes, right? So it links in. You can see the employment. If you scroll down, it'll be publications and then review history, right? So it's a really cool, quick look at who you are. So let's go back up. All right, so now we're going to go to the master, the funnel, lookout, whatever you want to call it, of Google Scholar up there. I think it's appropriate to have Google kind of looking out over everything like that. Setting up a Google Scholar profile is super beneficial in that it's probably the quickest of all these to set up, but its reach is huge, right? Which can be a good and bad thing, obviously, because there are so many results. But that's why you want to differentiate yourself, right? One neat thing is that if you set up your Google Scholar profile, you can actually export your citation list into other things like ORCID, which just saves a huge step and a lot of time, right? Other benefits, you can see who's citing your research. You can have your name be searchable, and you can even have your list updated automatically, which kind of works to varying degrees. Sometimes you have to keep doing it manually, which is fine. So over there on the right-hand side, you see I searched again for Stephen Hawking. His profile came up pretty quick. And then this is kind of a look at what it looks like. So, we have just the basic information there. We have a list of the publications, right? It's super structured. You can follow that. They have all the citations. So now we're getting into the impact metrics over here. And then you see the cited by. So if we click on one of those, it would go into all the publications that have cited that specific paper. And if you think about your own too, if you set this up and you start getting cited by others, you can go in and look and see who's citing you. Okay, can I reach out to this person? Does this give me another branch in other research areas? That kind of stuff. So it's very important to keep up to date with all these, I think. So then going back, so now we're going to go below into the common area with ResearchGate. And I know some of you probably have some opinions about ResearchGate, but honestly, it's a really unique in that it's basically social media directed at academics, right? And because of that, I think it's very advantageous for new and experienced researchers alike to have a presence on their platform. You can do a lot of organization within your profile too. You can create topics, projects, and add your publication information accordingly, which kind of then opens up that extra layer of searchability. So if a peer were to be looking into a specific subject, if they're interested in a similar topic, they could go into one of your projects that you're working on, see all your associated documents, and like open up that communication channel with you, right? Like a normal social media platform. But basically, I mean, this opens up to searching for information and contacts who might be able to provide insights or advice, right, with their research, or even just ask about their problems. It's a strong way to not only showcase your work, but a way to find others to collaborate with and generally just have conversations about research in a more natural way, right? And I say natural way on the internet, I guess like modern natural way. But I also know, I want to be clear here too, there's a lot of copyright kind of violations that happen in ResearchGate, I think. So be really careful with what you're sharing or what others are sharing, right? Just kind of always respect copyright. So let's look at, I think most of us probably know who Neil deGrasse Tyson is, the famous, physicist. So this is the basic profile. I mean, you can contact him right here if this is really his profile. Again, I don't know. Publications, right? So you can get a list of his publications, the network, the project he's working on. I only wish I could put my skills and expertise and set it up like what he has in here. His current institution, and then even co-authors, right? So maybe you're interested in looking at who his co-authors are. Maybe you can connect with them or, find other avenues of research there. All right, so moving along, we're gonna go to the deck of the ship now, or a lot of the work I think gets done, and take a look at LinkedIn. So LinkedIn actually has more than 800 million members now, that's just enormous. And it's a great way to connect with other researchers and educators and really create entire communities online, okay? So many may think initially it's just kind of a grand version of a CV and that it's just for job seekers. And honestly, while they wouldn't be entirely wrong, the advantage here is how you can tailor your profiles, look and feel to fit who you are, right? So you can showcase and express yourself better than the cookie cutter profiling systems you generally see. So like Google Scholar, right? Looks clean and everything, but it's pretty much the same everywhere. LinkedIn is also highly searchable within itself and actually searches through the entire profile for keywords. So if you take time to really describe each of your projects, yourself, your publications, you can dramatically increase your visibility. But it's also unique in that you can get eyes from a totally different audience, right? So you're talking corporate audience as well as academics, but other types of professionals too, okay? So you start piercing that veil of kind of the academic bubble, right? You can also use it like a social media platform and connect and communicate really easily with peers to get ideas, to bounce, ideas off of each other. But it goes further than that too, and I want to show you. So on the left side, I search for medical education and through events, right? And I mean, the top one, addressing inadequacies in healthcare. The second one, it has 12,000 attendees, and you keep going. So that was cool. And then on the right side, I searched medical education, just a blanket term again, in groups. And the first one, CME group, right? Continuing medical education. That very last one, International Association of Medical Education. Okay? So you can join a network with these like special interest groups and meet colleagues from around the world, right? So now you're just pairing up with people all over the place that have similar interests and are invested in the same things. It's really neat. Okay, so now we're going to move below deck, all right, into something that I don't see generally on these a lot. And I think it's a missed opportunity in a lot of ways. And it's also kind of institution specific, right? So if your institution has a repository or ScholarWorks, something like that similar. I use DSpace as the logo just because I think it's recognizable, but there's a ton of these, right? There's dozens of them. But I think there's a missed opportunity because a lot of repositories come with an author profile, and you don't necessarily have to set that up. Sometimes there's a dedicated person that does that for you, right? But even if you do, it's just one more channel, right? It's one more avenue to get your work out there and get that exposure, right? Not only with other eyes outside your university, but within your university too. So again, you're kind of going back to that being invested in your work and in your research, right? By by setting these up. Generally, they're open access, probably 99% of the time. So then you're contributing to the accessibility and equity of your research too, which is important. And then another point I don't think gets a lot of attention is that you're contributing to your institution's scholarly profile, which is only going to benefit you, right? So if the research output of your institution is getting recognized, you're going to get more eyes on that repository and potentially more eyes on your research, right? And who knows what that could lead to, okay? It could lead to connections all over the place and just more collaboration too. Okay, so actually I want to back up here and I want everybody to kind of hang on here because I think the hurricane of social media is coming and there's a lot of high winds. So we're going to jump up into Twitter here. So, there's a lot of pros and cons with social media, especially Twitter. And I mean, you can post a picture of the ocean and say water is wet and someone's going to disagree with you and probably be super mean about it. But I think too much attention is given to the negative side because in reality, social media like Twitter has given everyone a voice, okay? Which is really, really important. And with 200 million active daily users, which is just enormous use, by the way, this platform can give your research potentially a much broader voice and a much broader reach, right? So it makes it easier than ever to connect with people that share similar interests and passions, but also to expose others that may not know about it to your research, right? So now we're really breaking out of that veil of academia bubble, okay? We're really going outside into just general society. The Twitter research community is actually pretty large and it's growing, but like, again, you're hitting the non-academic, non-professionals, right? So you're getting exposure from everybody. So you're bringing those ideas that you may not normally hear from others, right? Those different points of view, different life experiences, all that kind of stuff, which can be really important. And you're exposing others, like I said, to what you're doing, right? Maybe you spark something in them. So you can promote your research in a super unique way through Twitter, right? You can still connect with other researchers. I mean, Twitter was, created to communicate quickly. So you can absolutely connect with other researchers and follow them, do all that kind of stuff, but you can also talk to others again. The interaction with the community is really unique. So you can tweet out a poll, right? Just see what's on everybody's minds. You can ask questions. If you use the right hashtags, you're going to get to people that you would have never been able to meet in your daily life, right? And again, get those opinions and ideas that are going to be way more diverse than what you might find on ResearchGate, okay? And then there's this other thing called social listening. So social listening is a technique that marketing companies use to see what their target audience is talking about, right? Which can reveal a lot. And to kind of define it real quick, you're searching for keywords and phrases and then combing through the conversations that pop up, right? So this can give you a good idea of what the general conversation is. And I really do believe this process is easily applied to research and education, okay? And I did a general search on Twitter for medical education challenge, okay? And the cool thing is that a PubMed Central article popped up first. But you can see how you could start getting a feel for what people are talking about on whatever you search for and what they're interested in, what questions they may have. And, what if that article had 300 plus retweets or, why would others be interested in it? Are similar tweets getting attention too, right? So on and so forth. So then you can start tailoring, like, what are people really looking into? What can I research that'll actually, get attention if that's what you want? What's appealing to everyone, basically. So one of the reasons why I chose these specific resources to highlight is because I think a great practice to keep in mind is diversification, right? It's kind of like the stock market. You want to be diversified in your self-marketing, if we want to go back to the beginning, and reach a broader audience, all right? So OCR ID establishes your name, essentially. ResearchGate is going to pull together a lot of academic and other research professionals in that almost, pseudo social media atmosphere. Google Scholar will also hit professionals, but there will be a lot of students and other eyes because honestly, It's Google, right? Let's face it, it's Google. LinkedIn is expanding on that ResearchGate audience while probably pushing the professional and job seeking side further. So those other professionals, like corporate audience again. And then you have Twitter, right? Just good old catch-all Twitter, where you can reach probably the largest, most diverse audience. But each one of these has their advantages and disadvantages. But each one is unique to some degree, right? In their reach and whose eyes may actually come across your work. So I told you I kind of wanted to go over real quick, like a strategy to help you manage this a little bit. So I propose a scholarly voyage challenge to everybody, right? Where you can sail across the world and sometimes over land because it just was easier to make like that. And so what I would say is, just for like the one low price of $9.99, you can, I'm just kidding, it's totally free. Katie's going to upload that in the chat pretty quick here. But I would say pick maybe 3 to 6, platforms. Doesn't have to be the ones I talked about today. Maybe you have some other ones. Write it in the top line. Okay. So like that very top line, I would put Google Scholar, right? And then below, set a date for yourself that you want to work on that, right? You want to update it. So say you pick 3, okay? There's 6 spots here. So every few months, right? So you can keep doubling up and going back and updating them. Or if you have 6 that you really want to do, spread it out over a year, right? So every 2 months you do 1. Just make it more manageable for yourself, but set goals, okay? Because there's a lot of freedom and discipline like this. And I think this will be really, really beneficial. And honestly, I mean, this could be your first tweet too, right? You fill this out, create a Twitter account, tweet it out, ask people like, what are you doing? What do you think of the ones that I'm doing? Like, just go from there. All right, so we would really love if you would take the survey that Katie's going to link in the chat. Tell us how we did, what we could improve upon. And this was kind of a high level overview because 30 minutes isn't a super long time to go into any of these in detail. So if you want to hear more about any of these, please tell us. We would love to go more in depth and stuff. It just kind of depends on what everybody actually wants to hear, right? And then please save the date for our next workshop on December 9th with Kelly Hines. It's going to be on advanced PubMed. So we're all looking forward to that one. And the registration link should probably be in the chat too. Other than that, I will stick around for a few minutes if anybody has any questions, but thank you very much for joining us on this scholarly snippet presentation.